Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Now, it looks like we've resolved our technical issues, and we are going to be honored to present to you Professor Sreeram Chaulia he's a professor and vice dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs at the O.P. Jindal Global University in Sonipat, India. Dr. Chaulia studied at Oxford, at Delhi, and has an MA and a PhD from Syracuse University, specifically from the Maxwell School. You can look at his website, Sreeram Chaulia. Let me just give you the spelling. It's SREERAMCHAULIA.net. You can see all the places that he publishes commentaries, notably Asia Times, Russia Today, and it was on Russia Today yesterday in the last 24 hours that he published, that he gave a, I think, extremely insightful interview, the meeting of the BRICS in New Delhi as marking the beginning of the end of this world dictatorship of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and above all the dollar. So we want to get the direct analysis of the conference. Dr. Chaulia, are you there?
Yes, thank you, Webster.
We're very honored, and we look forward to hearing from you everything that's going on. Why don't we just start from your overall strategic assessment that this is marking the beginning of the decline or the end of the reign of the dollar, the IMF, and the World Bank?
Well, it's been happening for a while now, and it makes sense to think about ages passing and new eras beginning now, because the momentum towards moving away from the dollar and from Bretton Woods hegemony has been ongoing for the last, I would say, a decade at least, which I characterize as the move away from unipolarity. And so I think it's been happening at a brisk pace, and what we saw just yesterday in Delhi is in many ways a culmination of the process, where they have launched the formal proceedings to establish a BRICS Development Bank, which will be a bank for the Global South. So institutionally, it's a culmination, and of course, there's a lot of work that still needs to be done in terms of seeding this new bank, and then operating it as a lending agency as well as a force for macroeconomic stability. It's not yet clear whether this bank is going to be doubling up both as, say, the IMF and the World Bank of the Global South, because as of now, the talk has been mostly about its portfolio being as a lending agency only for infrastructure growth and for speeding up trade within the Global South, and also for poverty alleviation and such things. So I think at the moment it is comparable to the World Bank only. But I suppose that there are also all these currency swap arrangements and arrangements for trading within the BRICS groups in their respective local currencies. So you are right to say that dollar hegemony is being challenged in the process. But it's still interesting how the BRICS are playing it safe at the moment, and they're only issuing statements saying this new bank is going to be parallel to the existing ones, rather than a replacement either to the World Bank or to the Asian Development Bank, which is, operates on similar capitalistic principles. So they are not, sticking their necks out and saying that this institution is meant to challenge Bretton Woods. But I think privately they will all express extreme disgust with the way the IMF and the World Bank have trampled over the rights of the poor in the developing world. And privately they will all say that we are building towards that scenario which you have just mentioned, which is a fall of the Bretton Woods system. But I think publicly they want to be cautious. They don't want to be bombastic and then run into difficulties which are likely to crop up in any new ambitious global financial institution such as this one that the BRICS are planning. Back to you, Webster.
All right, so that's the BRICS Development Bank. Now, maybe we can just ask you about the other side of the same coin, the idea of using what I think they call local, but I think are really using national currencies for financing bilateral trade and getting away from financing it through, the London euro dollar market or something like this.
Yes, the Chinese have been doing it quite successfully for a while. They have been expanding renminbi-based trade with countries which are buying and selling to China. So the yuan zone, let's say, is on an expansionary mode. I think close to a dozen countries now accept renminbi as the reserve currency for trading between China and them. So in that sense, it's already happened on a small scale. And now with BRICS trading among themselves in their local currencies will mean obviously that they will be insulated from the wild fluctuations of the dollar, as well as the long-term weakness of the U.S. economy, which could undermine the dollar. So I think it is safe, as well as creating a reserve of money in the hands of actors in these respective BRIC countries, so that if you buy and then you accumulate, say, the yuan or the rupee in one of the other countries, then you will also want to use that to purchase from the other side. So what it does is it creates let's say, a virtuous cycle of mutual interdependence, which is a good idea. And then eventually, once this trading mechanism works within the BRICS, and they may have to come up with a basket, of currencies which combines the financial might of all the 5 countries, and perhaps a few more which will join this bandwagon of the so-called emerging economies group, because BRICS, I think, is not permanent. It's a situational arrangement which has come about in the last 10 years, because these 5 have grown. But then you have Mexico, Indonesia, South Korea, Turkey, and so on, who have been named as the next BRICS. So eventually it will be a grouping, fairly large grouping, and they would actually find safety as well as stability, and I think a sense of increasing self-importance on the world stage by using their local currencies. So it will be, I think, a challenge to the dollar in the long run. But of course, we all know that each of the individual BRICS countries still keep quite a large proportion of their foreign exchange reserves in the dollar at the moment. But then, people are watching the deficits in the United States with great wariness, and the Chinese have, of course, made it known publicly that that they will be watching the stability of the United States economy and the long-term reliability of the dollar. So I think it is clear strategically each of the BRICS countries, and collectively also, they know that dollar hegemony is at the root of United States power in the world. And although the U.S. economy is declining, we have seen a strange tendency where the dollar has become the safe haven for those who are feeling jittery over the last 4 years since the crash of Wall Street. So ironically, the United States economy is not doing great, but then the dollar is still in high demand. So this cycle will end when people start realizing that there's another alternative basket of currencies where you can post your...
Dr. Chaulia, you talked before about a basket of BRICS currencies that could be used for trade and financing. And the thing that suggests, this may be a little bit technical for some of our listeners, but if you're going to do that, you're looking back to attempts to do it in the past, right? We had the transfer ruble of the Comecon. We've had the special drawing rights, which is some kind of a basket. These have limited success, but one of the things you would need, or maybe 2 things, you'd need a clearing bank, some kind of a settlement bank where you could clear the balances on a multilateral basis. If you've got 5 participants right now, you could tote that up and then see who owes what to whom at the end of the year. Maybe maybe the other side of it is, is there a series of development projects that one could identify that would be the agenda for the development bank? For example, we might say, well, we need the Ganges Brahmaputra flood control project, or the Bering, well, maybe not that one, but we have to do the Kra Canal in Thailand or something like this.
Yeah. Well, there is no dearth of infrastructure needs. In fact, what is clear is that if you see Chinese economic diplomacy in Africa and Latin America, it is premised upon the infrastructure capacity building of these countries. I was recently in Southern Africa, and it was clear that traffic is clogging the main arteries of the capital city, and the Chinese are building a ring road. It is clear that their hinterland is not connected to the urban market centers, and the Chinese are building bridges and dams. So these kind of projects, I think eventually the BRICS Bank has to go beyond its own intra-BRIC economic exchanges. It has to become a bank for the entire global South, and that's where I have proposed in the past that it should link up with the Bank of the South, the Banco del Sur of President Chavez, and the ALBA group of countries in Latin America. Then it will become a truly continental, intercontinental bank, which is global in scope, because right now it is still in a preliminary stage where they're talking only about lending among themselves and maybe to some other countries of the global South. So it has to become global. On the clearing for the basket of currencies, absolutely, they'll have to develop these instruments. And if you see, since the Asian financial crisis of 1997, there has been talk about creating these kind of institutions. There is the so-called Chiang Mai initiative, which involves such complex financial transactions to stabilize trade and investment, and also the idea of an Asian monetary fund. But then, as I've said just now, it's not enough for it to be limited to Asia or to BRICS. They will have to globalize it. And I think some of the member states have the vision, while the others are more cautious for various reasons. So they will not, as I said right at the beginning, they will not argue that they are going to upstage the IMF and the World Bank, but quietly and with vision and with strategic vision, they can do it. And the need is there. I mean, especially among the so-called least developed countries, I think they would be looking up to BRICS if they can provide the leadership. Because right now, BRICS is only talking about its own importance in the world, but eventually it will have to go back to the position where it's shouldering the burden of leadership of the global South. There have been frictions between BRICS and the so-called LDCs, and this needs to be bridged and through the actions of this new bank, so that there is mutual trust, and so that people in the global South realize that this is a formidable institution that is providing them a true alternative to the World Bank and the IMF. Everyone's chafing against the World Bank and the IMF for its conditionalities and for its stranglehold, but they are also looking for alternatives. And individually, China has already become an alternative to some of these countries. But then, if China comes along with other emerging economies to the table, I think it will be more legitimate, one, and will not be seen as neo-colonial by the LDCs. And two, it just expands the options for trading and for infrastructure growth for LDCs beyond just the Chinese model, which in some parts of Africa and Latin America has been controversial. So it will be important to avoid the mistakes of the Bretton Woods neocolonialism and to do it better and to do it based on the principle of solidarity, which is the basis of South-South cooperation right since its inception.